Hello, everyone, and welcome to our channel. If you love stories packed with interstellar intrigue and unexpected twists, then you're in exactly the right place. Today's tale delves into the shocking finale of Human Gave an Alien Girl a Leg Massage, and what happened next was unbelievable. Picture this. Our heroes risk everything to infiltrate a hidden research lab, reprogram a dangerous neural device, and outsmart a powerful corporate overlord, an ending no one saw coming. Want to know exactly how that astonishing confrontation unfolds? You'll have to hear the entire story to find out. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these thrilling sci-fi adventures, and you'll be the first to know when new stories drop. Feel free to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments. Tell us what you think about the characters, the world building, or your own take on how the story should end. Also share where you're tuning in from so others can find the best place to listen. Now let's jump in and discover how this unforgettable saga concludes. The Celestia terminal floated like a grand chandelier in the silent expanse of space, its curved superstructure flashing with navigational beacons and glittering panels. Shuttles, freighters, and diplomatic crafts all converged here, weaving a tapestry of interstellar commerce and fleeting alliances. Among these arrivals was a small transport vessel called the Aegis Dawn, which eased into a docking platform without fuss or ceremony. Once its ramp lowered, Commander Evander Cross of the Unity Protective Force stepped onto the smooth deck with the sort of determined stride befitting his rank. He was tall, well-built, sporting a high-collared gray sleeveless top that did nothing to hide the sinews of his broad arms, and dark, functional shorts. Evander's sharp eyes darted around the immaculate interior of the station, a standard precaution for any soldier trained in special operations. Even though this was technically a respite, 12 hours of shore leave, courtesy of his commanding officer, Captain Sonari, Evander could never fully turn off his instincts. He had come straight from a conflict in the Vegas sector, where tensions had exploded into covert operations and last-minute rescues. Devising medical support under heavy fire was, in fact, Evander's specialty. He was a field medic who'd pulled many fellow soldiers from the brink of death. Now, for once, he had a chance to relax, or so he told himself. Of course, relaxation for a Unity operative often meant constantly scanning for threats, even while trying to enjoy a stiff drink. Regardless, Evander's body still hummed with the adrenaline from his last mission, a sensation he usually kept under lock and key but could never completely quell. He owed himself a moment of peace, though, and the Celestia Terminal's lavish amenities promised precisely that. His first stop was the Starfall Lounge, a luxurious venue perched on the highest level of the station's central hub. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided sweeping views of the infinite cosmos, punctuated by the distant shimmer of passing ships. The lounge glowed with subdued blue and gold lights, offering an atmosphere as soothing as it was opulent. Evander found a quiet seat near the transparent dome, ordered a potent Jovian whiskey, and let himself soak in the hush of well-deserved leisure. As the liquor's warmth eased some of the tightness from his shoulders, he observed the handful of patrons scattered among the plush seats. This was supposedly a calm respite for bureaucrats, merchants, and the occasional soldier like himself. And then he saw her. A female Azurian sat at the bar, her turquoise skin seeming to reflect the lounge's cool lighting. She wore a fitted onyx bodysuit that left her arms and legs bare, adorned with swirling, silver ink markings that teased the eye. Long, shimmering teal hair cascaded around her shoulders, capturing and reflecting faint luminescence. Yet what truly held Evander's attention was her obvious discomfort. She would shift in her seat, wince, and then reach down to knead her calf in apparent frustration. Even from his vantage, he recognized the pained posture of someone nursing an injury. His medical training went into overdrive, pushing aside his inclination for solitude. When he approached, whiskey glass in hand, he kept his voice calm and unthreatening. "Looks like you might have a strained muscle there," he said, cutting it at her leg. Startled, the Azurian turned, revealing bright emerald eyes with elliptical pupils that widened slightly. For a moment, Evander wondered if he had made a misstep, intervening too soon. But then she spoke, her voice melodic despite a guarded edge. "I don't recall asking for help." Evander dipped his head politely, refusing to take offense. "Commander Evander Cross," he offered by way of introduction. Unity Protective Force, also a medic, if that helps. At this, the Azurian woman's posture eased a fraction, curiosity flitting across her features. Her eyes flicked from his face to his well-defined arms, perhaps noticing the faint scars of an experienced soldier. Slowly, she adjusted her seat, conceding just enough to invite continued conversation. "My name is Saria Callista," she replied, lifting her hand to brush a strand of her teal hair back from her face. Not that it should matter to a passing human. Despite her dismissive words, Evander sensed that Saria's eyes sparkled with more intrigue than hostility. There was an almost playful twist to her lips, as though she was testing him, seeing if he would retreat in discomfort or press on. Undeterred, Evander gestured toward her calf. "It looks like you have a classic muscle knot, particularly on the lateral side. Could be from overexertion or training. If you let me help, it might feel better in minutes." He was no stranger to offering medical assistance across diverse species. The Unity Protective Force required advanced xenophysiology coursework, ensuring that top medics could treat injuries for over a dozen recognized sapient races. Azurians in particular had unique circulatory and muscular structures that often demanded specialized techniques. Saria's gaze turned skeptical. "Does every human medic offer free massages?" "Only the good ones," Evander responded with a friendly quirk of his eyebrows. "And only when it looks like someone's in pain." He pulled up a low, curved stool beside her and waited for permission to proceed. After a moment's hesitation, Saria rotated toward him, letting her elegantly sculpted leg rest upon his lap. Up close, her turquoise skin looked almost iridescent, faint swirling patterns shimmering just beneath the surface. With a measured touch, Evander pressed his thumbs along her calf, applying alternating pressure to coax the tense muscle into relaxation. The moment his fingers began working the knot, Saria inhaled sharply, her initial discomfort giving way to astonishment. "By the two moons," she breathed, surprise creeping into her melodic voice. "That actually helps." Her gaze, previously sharp with suspicion, softened. Evander recognized the classic response, a release of lactic acids and the restoration of proper blood flow. He carefully adjusted the pressure, drawing on field medic experience gleaned from countless missions where swift, effective relief could mean the difference between life and death. She gave a small, involuntary shudder as the pain receded, replaced by a kind of curious pleasure. "Feels better?" he asked, lightly rotating her ankle to test the leg's tension. Saria nodded, still processing what he had done. "It's a standard technique," he continued quietly, "though I guess humans have had a lot of time to perfect it. This station lounge is a bit more comfortable than a battlefield, but the methods are the same." Outside, an unspoken warmth grew between them. Saria had not only relaxed physically, but seemed to invite Evander's presence in a subtle shift of body language. "Perhaps you've earned yourself a drink," Saria said at last, nodding to the bartender. "I was about to try something stronger than what I have. Care to join me?" Evander gently helped her set her leg back down, resisting the faint tingle of attraction that stirred in him. Whatever Saria was wearing, some exotic Azurian fragrance, sent a faint, entrancing scent into the air. He had to remind himself that this might simply be a fleeting encounter. After all, he was scheduled to return to duty in less than half a day, and Saria had already shown she could be as guarded as she was alluring. Still in this moment, the invitation to share a drink felt like a small victory. And though Evander had no idea how drastically his life would change because of this simple act of kindness, he sensed that destiny had already cracked open a door he'd never even considered knocking upon. They settled into the plush seating near the lounge's transparent dome, a pair of tall, slender glasses filled with Azurian pearl liqueur resting on a small table between them. The beverage shimmered with the color of dawn, swirling with glints of silver as if tiny galaxies danced in the liquid. Saria took a measured sip, her lips curving into a slight grin as the sweet yet heady flavor bloomed on her tongue. Evander followed suit, letting the complex taste unfold in his mouth, a careful, pleasant mix of fruit-like essence and a deeper, intriguing undertone that defied simple classification. "You're a quick study," Saria remarked as she observed Evander's reaction. "Azurians usually find pearl liqueur a bit overwhelming, but you seem more amused than shocked." The ice in her previous tone had thawed notably, and Evander felt he was catching glimpses of someone both confident and curious. It was the same spark of life he sometimes saw in fellow soldiers after returning from intense missions. an enthusiasm for new experiences shaped by too close brushes with danger. He shrugged, swirling the liquid in his glass to watch the metallic flecks swirl. As a field medic, you train to adapt quickly. New planets, new species, new ways of healing. Food and drink are just another facet. I guess you could say it's an occupational habit. His readiness to adapt was no mere boast. The thick file of commendations in his service record spoke volumes of how adaptable he truly was. Still, the steel behind his eyes was gently veiled tonight. He sensed in Saria a potential ally, though he didn't quite understand why the thought crossed his mind so soon. Saria leaned back, crossing her legs in a languid, graceful motion that again drew his attention to her turquoise skin. "So you said you're here on shore leave? After some fiasco in the Vega sector, if I recall the latest dispatches on Unity conflicts. Are you at liberty to share what happened?" Evander exhaled, letting out a quiet laugh. "I can talk in broad strokes. Infiltration, political sabotage, rescue, the usual. We had to retrieve a diplomatic envoy under heavy fire, and I ended up carrying an injured ambassador out of the firefight." "I see," she said, swirling her glass. "Always the hero, then." Her smile carried a note of teasing. Before he could respond, he noticed a trio of individuals stepping into the lounge, scanning the patrons. Dressed in matching dark uniforms with the emblem of a private security firm, they cut an imposing figure. Their eyes locked on Saria as soon as they spotted her, and Evander's body tensed instinctively. The group approached, ignoring the lounge's decorum. One of them, a tall Drethys male with a curved horn-like ridge on his brow, stepped forward. "Lady Saria Callista," he addressed her, tone curt. "Your father requests your immediate presence in the upper quadrants. We are here to escort you." Evander felt Saria go rigid beside him. The cordial host vanished from her posture in a heartbeat, replaced by cold politeness. "I'm in the middle of a private meeting," she countered, flicking her gaze at Evander. "He can wait." The Drethys security officer's voice rumbled with tension. "I fear he does not see it that way, my lady." His eyes flicked meaningfully at Evander, sizing him up. Evander met the gaze unflinchingly, aware that these mercenary-like enforcers could cause major trouble in no time. He noticed a concealed plasma sidearm strapped to the man's belt, an item strictly regulated aboard the Celestia terminal. The lounge was no place for open conflict, and station regulations could be swift in punishing violence. But the Drethys didn't seem concerned about rules. Saria's posture grew icier. "I don't appreciate being followed or cornered," she said. "Nor do I recognize my father's authority to disrupt my personal pursuits." The exchange hinted at a deeper rift within Saria's family. Evander couldn't help but feel a surge of protectiveness, though he was uncertain of the reasons behind it. Perhaps it was his field medic instincts, stepping in to safeguard someone seemingly under threat. Or perhaps there was a kernel of deeper resonance in how she'd said "my father" with such barely masked resentment. "You are required to comply," insisted another Drethys security guard, clearly not wishing to spark a public altercation but equally unwilling to back down. "Your companion here is not permitted." Evander tensed, scanning the environment for any sign of station security that might intervene. But the lounge was almost empty, and the two bartenders were wisely keeping their distance. This scenario had all the hallmarks of trouble, and he sensed that Saria's relationship with her father was far more complicated than a casual family disagreement. In the span of heartbeats, Evander weighed his options. The simplest course would be to fade away, letting the Azurian handle her own private affairs. Yet the tension in Saria's shoulders, the fear and anger rippling beneath her defiant gaze, clutched at his conscience. Something was wrong, deeply so. He recalled the fleeting glimpses of pain in her eyes, the subtle references to family politics. This was more than a father's overbearing demands. It felt like corporate or dynastic power at play, the kind that rarely took kindly to outside interference. "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding here," Evander interjected softly, stepping just enough to place himself between Saria and the largest of the Drethys guards. "We're only enjoying a brief conversation." "There's no need to—" "Stay out of this," the tall guard snapped. "Lady Callista, you must come with us now or we'll be forced to remove you." Two other guards fanned out slightly, a show of force that made Evander's nerves prickle. He might be able to disarm one or two, but three heavily armed individuals, especially if they carried advanced Drethys weaponry, would be risky. The last thing he wanted was to escalate a violent confrontation in a public lounge. Saria squared her shoulders and spoke in a measured tone. Commander Cross, meet Callista Security, my father's private hounds, though typically my father only dispatches them when he's worried his assets won't remain loyal. She aimed a sardonic look at the trio. Perhaps you can remind him that I am my own person, not an asset, and I will meet him if and when I deem it necessary. Your father does not share that sentiment, the guard stated, voice laced with threat. Evander caught a slight shift in the man's posture, a universal sign of impending aggression. On reflex, Evander rested a hand on Saria's shoulder, quietly guiding her to stand slightly behind him. It was at that moment the lounge doors slid open again. This time, a small group of station security officers stepped inside, drawn no doubt by an anonymous tip or the tension radiating like static in the air. The ranking officer took stock of the scene, his expression unreadable but alert. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly, scanning the two groups. For a long beat, no one moved. The Drethys guards looked uncertain, clearly reluctant to cause an incident under the station's watch. Saria, sensing an opportunity, spoke first. "No problem at all, officer," she said, voice dripping with forced politeness. "These individuals were just leaving, I believe." The lead guard's jaw tightened. Unable to enact their orders without risking an arrest, the Drethys stepped back in reluctant acquiescence. "This isn't finished," he warned Saria quietly, then turned and led his cohorts out of the lounge. The station security officer nodded, satisfied that no immediate danger remained, and followed them out, likely to confirm that the guards obeyed the station's rules. Evander exhaled slowly, feeling the adrenaline rush of a near-violent standoff subside. Saria didn't seem any more relaxed, though. Instead, she pressed a hand to her temple as if she had a migraine. The swirl of lights in her eyes shifted, the elliptical pupils constricting. "I guess you got more excitement than you bargained for," she said with a shaky half-laugh. He studied her, voice gentle. "Are you all right?" She shrugged, refusing to meet his gaze. "No, but I'll deal with it." Then she seemed to remember something. "Thank you for stepping in, though. You risked trouble you didn't need." Evander answered her with a thoughtful nod. It seemed like the right thing to do. Besides, I didn't like the way they spoke to you. But deep within his mind, something niggled. Saria's connection to a father who apparently commanded an entire private security force could indicate a far-reaching influence. The Callista name, did it ring a bell? Perhaps from briefings about corporate powers in the sector. Even so, all he truly knew was that he couldn't look away from the resolute figure before him. Saria smiled wistfully, a trace of gratitude hidden behind her guarded stance. "Well, Commander, if you're interested in continuing our conversation somewhere a bit more private, since our quiet lounge is compromised, I have a suite on this station, and if you still have a few hours left of your shore leave, perhaps we can make better use of that time." Evander paused only briefly before agreeing, curiosity gnawing at him. He recognized that this might be stepping into something complicated, far beyond a casual night's company. Yet Saria's gaze, simultaneously vulnerable and defiant, spoke of secrets and burdens. Perhaps it was his nature as both soldier and medic that made him susceptible, but he couldn't deny a compulsion to help. They left the Starfall Lounge, walking side by side through corridors lined with polished metal walls and the hum of overhead lighting. The Celestia Terminal's design combined luxurious comfort with strategic safety, a hallmark of major trade stations. Passing a handful of late-night travelers and the occasional cleaning droid, they eventually reached a set of gilded double doors stamped with the Callista family crest, a stylized star overlaid on a half-moon motif. Saria keyed in a biometric code and the doors whispered open into an expansive, suite-like space. The decor inside was all sleek lines, soft luminescence, and plush furnishings. A panoramic window dominated one wall, revealing the endless starfield outside. Beyond a short hallway, Evander could see a living area, a small private bar, and another sealed door that likely led to Saria's personal quarters. Everything spoke of wealth, perhaps even extravagance. Saria seemed uncomfortable standing amidst such opulence, arms crossed, eyes averted. "Make yourself at home," she said, gesturing loosely. "There's a bar if you want another drink. Or I can have the auto server replicate something more specialized." Evander studied her. Maybe later, he said, recalling the brush with the Drethus guards. I want to make sure you're safe first. Is there a reason your father's men are so intent on forcing you to meet him? Are you in danger? Saria huffed softly, frustration dancing over her features. You saw how they tried to corner me. My father controls half the major antimatter supply across 3 star systems. He's Overlord Astreus Callista, though I suppose you don't keep track of corporate monarchs on your missions. She shook her head, swirling her teal hair around her shoulders. He wants me to toe the family line, to fall in with his grand plans for empire building. I have my own priorities, like focusing on medical applications, not militarized expansions. He hates when I stand in his way. Evander felt a twinge of recognition. So you're no stranger to conflict, he mused, stepping closer to her. I saw your expression back there. You weren't just annoyed, you were ready to fight if it came to that. Her turquoise cheeks flushed a deeper shade. I've had to learn. Family politics can be brutal. An electronic beep suddenly chimed from a console near the entrance, drawing both their attention. The suite's security feed flickered on the embedded screen, showing 3 new figures in the hallway outside. More of Callista's security, no doubt. They appeared to be discussing how best to breach the doors. Saria's eyes narrowed. They're persistent. Before Evander could reply, the console beeped again. Only this time, it was his personal comm device that vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at the ID, Captain Sonari, requesting immediate contact. Duty or personal concern? The question thundered in Evander's mind. Saria cast him a look that mingled fear with stubborn determination. I can handle them, she insisted, taking a bold step toward the panel that controlled door locks. But if you leave now, you'll probably slip clear of this mess. At that moment, Evander knew with surprising clarity that he wouldn't walk away. The black and white lines of soldierly duty had blurred the instant he touched her calf and felt that first spark of connection. I'll be right with you, he said, ignoring Captain Sonari's call. When the console fell silent, he placed his focus squarely on Saria. Let's deal with your father's men, and then we'll figure out what's really going on. Saria blinked at him, an unreadable mix of relief and astonishment crossing her face. Perhaps no one else in her life had ever offered straightforward support without an ulterior motive. Thank you, she whispered. The glow in her emerald eyes intensified, reflecting both gratitude and lingering worry. Outside the door, the guards paced, likely plotting to override security codes. Evander slid his shoulders back, mentally reviewing potential forms of non-lethal confrontation. He was unarmed except for a hidden short blade and his well-honed medical knowledge. But if push came to shove, he'd defend this suite, in Saria, in the best capacity he could muster. In short order, the corridor lights flickered, indicating a lockdown sequence initiated from the outside. They're trying to override the suite's security from a remote panel, Saria muttered, swiping her fingers across a holographic console to institute countermeasures. Evander observed the complex dance of technology with mild amazement. Evidently, Saria had prepared for infiltration attempts. A second series of pulses in the overhead lighting suggested that the guards were stepping up their assault. If they couldn't hack the system digitally, they might attempt something more brute force. Evander positioned himself near the doorway, pressing a palm flat against the metal. He could detect faint vibrations as if the mercenaries beyond were using specialized tools to breach the locks. Saria glanced over, expression grim. Father must be furious if he's sending this many men after me. She typed a final command, and the suite's internal defenses hummed to life, culminating in an electric shield that would slow down any forced entry. This might buy us time, she said. Time was exactly what Evander needed to figure out the bigger picture. He pulled her aside gently, tilting his head toward a quieter corner of the room. We're not going to hold out against a determined assault forever, he noted. Is there another way out? There's a hidden maintenance shaft that leads to a cargo bay, Saria admitted. I'd planned it as an escape route if negotiations got out of hand. We can flee the station or move somewhere secure enough to regroup. Her lips tightened. But if I run now, it confirms to my father that he can dictate my every move. Still, maybe that's better than giving these mercenaries the upper hand. Evander, scanning the suite's readouts, frowned. I doubt they're just here to escort you. They might be prepared to restrain or even harm you if you resist. Let's not give them that chance. He moved quickly, collecting a small field med kit from his personal belt pouch. Lead the way. Nodding, Saria pivoted toward a seamless wall panel that slid back under her biometrics. Behind it lay a dimly lit tunnel, barely large enough for someone of Evander's build to navigate comfortably. The hum of the compromised door grew louder. With a final glance around, they stepped into the tunnel, and the panel closed behind them, leaving only the faintest trace that it existed. "What's your plan when we get out?" Saria asked as she crawled along, her voice echoing in the narrow passage. "Return to your commanding officer? Abandon me to the whims of my father's underlings?" Her words carried a wary skepticism, and Evander winced at the distrust hidden in her tone. "I'm not abandoning anyone," he said firmly, "but I can't ignore my captain's orders forever. Once we're safe, I owe Captain Sonaria calm. She's probably wondering where I am." In truth, he suspected his superior had caught wind of some last-minute operation, perhaps even involving Callista corporate politics. It wouldn't be the first time Evander's shore leave got tangled in unexpected complications. They inched through the narrow corridor until the tunnel branched off. Saria tapped a small display on the wall. "This route should drop us near the cargo docks. I have a small transport there, modified for personal use. We can slip away from the station, or at least hole up somewhere more discreet." Another distant metallic thud echoed from behind them, suggesting that the mercenaries might soon discover the secret passage. Saria quickened her pace and Evander followed, occasionally pressing a hand to the walls to steady himself in the tight space. At last, they reached a hatch. Saria entered another code, and a mechanical hiss signaled that the hatch was unsealing. She pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit cargo storage area lined with metal crates. The hum of the station's life support vents washed over them, accompanied by the faint rumble of distant machinery. As the pair climbed out, Evander took in the surroundings. Standard cargo staging room, about a dozen meters square, with forklift drones resting quietly at the edges. Clearly, Saria had invested effort in learning the Celestia terminal's hidden corners. "Over there," she said, pointing to a small side door leading to a private docking slip. She stepped forward, only to freeze mid-stride. Evander immediately sensed it too, the presence of someone else. Footsteps echoed from behind the crates, accompanied by the low whir of a weapon charging. Evander pulled Saria behind a tall crate, heart pounding as he peered into the semi-darkness. A solitary figure emerged, a Drethys mercenary, but not one of the three from the lounge. This man looked older, with a scar tracing his jawline, holding a sleek plasma rifle. Clearly, he'd either preempted their plan or had been stationed there to cut them off. The mercenary's eyes flicked around warily, suggesting he didn't have them pinpointed quite yet. Saria glanced at Evander, fear mingled with determination. Without exchanging a word, Evander touched his chest, indicating he would draw the mercenary's attention. She nodded, silently acknowledging that she'd move toward the side door and attempt to initiate whatever security override was necessary for them to flee. Carefully, Evander crept forward, staying low, weaving between the stacked crates. In the gloom, he could see the mercenary's restless movements, like a predator smelling its prey but unable to find it. Then, with deliberate force, Evander kicked a loose metal bar that clanged against the ground. The noise echoed in the enclosed space. Instantly, the mercenary spun, rifle aimed at the sound. Evander ducked behind another stack of crates. A burst of plasma fire lit up the dim cargo bay, scorching metal and leaving wisps of molten residue. Taking advantage of that distraction, Saria dashed toward the side door. The mercenary reacted too late, whirling to track her with the barrel of his weapon, but Evander seized the opportunity to launch himself forward. With quick reflexes, he grabbed the muzzle of the rifle, pushing it upward just as the trigger was pulled again. Another scorching bolt of plasma streaked into the ceiling. Enraged, the mercenary twisted and brought an elbow down toward Evander's shoulder. Evander blocked the blow, his training as both soldier and field medic guiding his movements. He recognized the typical Drethys fighting stance, powerful but reliant on intimidation. Ducking low, he drove the heel of his palm into the mercenary's gut, forcing out a pained grunt. The man staggered backward, losing grip on his rifle. A swift kick sent it clattering across the cargo floor. From the corner of his eye, Evander caught sight of Saria working the door's control panel, the small lights flickering in compliance as she executed multiple hacks. He had to ensure she had enough time to complete the override. The mercenary recovered and advanced with a savage snarl, fists raised. Evander met the onslaught head-on, blocking a heavy punch to his ribs before delivering a rapid strike to the man's knee. The mercenary's leg buckled, and he let out a muffled curse. Yet the Drethus was sturdier than most humans, quickly trying to pivot and catch Evander with a backhand blow. Evander exhaled sharply as the mercenary's knuckles caught his cheek, sending a burst of pain across his jaw. He stumbled, but his mind remained clear. Another quick sidestep allowed him to hook his foot around the man's ankle and topple him. Seizing the opportunity, Evander clamped a knee onto the downed opponent's chest, pinning him. "Sleep," he muttered, pressing expertly on a nerve cluster near the mercenary's collarbone. The Drethus struggled for a few seconds before his eyes rolled back, and he sank into unconsciousness. "Got it," Surya called from across the cargo bay. The side door slid open, revealing a small docking area and a modest ship with a sleek design. "Let's move." Evander scooped up the dropped plasma rifle, double-checking that it still had a stable charge, then sprinted to join her. The unconscious mercenary wouldn't remain docile forever, but hopefully they'd be gone by the time he woke. They boarded Sarya's personal shuttle, a craft that looked deceptively plush from the outside, with swirling motifs reminiscent of Azurian artistry across its hull. Once inside, however, Evander saw that the interior boasted robust shielding panels, reinforced doors, and an advanced medical station built into one wall. It was a peculiar setup, part luxury, part emergency triage bay. Sarya sealed the hatch, and the engine hummed to life as the vessel lifted from the docking clamp. Through the forward view screen, Evander saw the cargo bay slip away beneath them. Once they were clear of the station's docking traffic, Sarya engaged the autopilot for a stable sublight course away from the Celestia terminal. Only then did she slump against the nearest seat, a trembling exhale escaping her. Evander took the pilot's chair, one eye on the readouts and the other on her. "You okay?" he asked, concern evident. "I'm shaken," she admitted, rubbing her forearm absently. "I knew it might come to a confrontation, but this is the first time my father's men have actually tried to force me into compliance. It's always been intimidation or political pressure before." Her emerald eyes glimmered with unshed tears, frustration shining through. Evander reached out, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. After a moment, she seemed to gather herself. "We should put distance between us and the station before they scramble pursuit. My father will label this an act of aggression, even though we're just defending ourselves." She quickly ran through a system check on the autopilot console. Her posture grew taut again as she glimpsed the blinking message on Evander's personal comm. "You should probably talk to your captain," Sarya said softly, not meeting his gaze. Evander nodded, initiating the secure channel. When Captain Sonari's image appeared on the screen, her stern expression revealed both concern and impatience. "Commander Cross, you've missed our scheduled check-in. What is your status?" Her gaze drifted to the star-studded backdrop behind him. "Why are you in flight rather than enjoying the station's hospitality?" Quickly, Evander explained the confrontation, albeit in measured terms, highlighting that an unforeseen entanglement with private Callista enforcers had forced him to depart the Celestia terminal. As he spoke, he caught Sarya giving him a studying look, her face pensive, almost as though she feared what he might reveal. Captain Sonari's lips pressed into a thin line. "I see. Well, your timing may be more than a coincidence, Commander. I'm receiving intel about a potential escalation in the Callista corporate empire, something to do with advanced neural technology they're rumored to be developing. There's a reason the Unity Protective Force has been monitoring Callista expansions for months. I suspect you've unwittingly stumbled into the crux of that intelligence operation." Evander's pulse quickened. "You think Sarya's father is part of a military R&D scheme, possibly creating weaponized biotech?" Sonari hesitated, clearly weighing the value of full disclosure. "Potentially. High-level rumors indicate new neural interface tech that could disrupt free will or enslave entire populations if abused. We don't have solid proof, but if it's true, it's bigger than anything we've seen in recent memory. I'm assigning you to confirm or deny these developments, Cross. Use your connection to gather intel if you can do so safely. But remember, your primary duty is to the Unity Protective Force. We cannot allow dangerous technology to fall into unscrupulous hands." With that, she ended the transmission, leaving Evander staring at the blank screen, gathering intel. So that was it. His short respite had morphed into a new covert mission, and Saria, this intriguing, strong-willed Azurian, stood right in the middle. He turned to find her eyeing him with guarded unease. "It seems your father's on the radar," Evander said gently. "Captain Sonari wants me to look into a rumored neural tech project. Does that ring a bell?" Saria's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Might know something," she acknowledged, each word careful. "But it's not what people assume, or at least not what I want it to be. All I ever wanted was to expand medical research, not facilitate weapons." Evander signaled for Saria to sit beside him. With the autopilot taking them deeper into open space, they finally had a moment to talk freely. She eased into the seat, self-consciousness making her fold her arms as if warding off a chill. "My father's corporation, Callista Prime, has partnered with several research institutes to develop advanced neural interface technology," she began. "They tout it as a potential leap forward in medical science, allowing quick, non-invasive treatments for neural damage, consciousness transfer for patients with failing bodies, and so on. It could be a miraculous tool for healing countless injuries and diseases." "But you suspect otherwise," Evander said, noting her conflicted expression. Saria nodded slowly. "Or I know otherwise. There's a sub-project within the same program, a side application that seeks to harness the interface as a method of force compliance. If perfected, it could override an individual's free will, effectively turning them into living puppets. I stumbled onto that line of research months ago and tried to warn the board, but they were all enthralled by the profit potential. My father claimed he'd keep it on the medical track, but each new partnership he forged smelled like a deeper step into militarizing the technology." Evander felt a chill at the prospect. As a field medic, he'd seen the devastating effects of advanced weapons. But mind control or forced compliance? That was a new level of horror. "And you tried to sabotage it?" "Yes," Saria admitted, exhaling shakily. "I leaked partial data to a coalition of medical ethicists, hoping they'd blow the whistle on Callista Prime. Unfortunately, they only had enough evidence to cause suspicion, not to halt the program. Meanwhile, father discovered my tampering. He's been hounding me ever since, presumably to keep me from revealing more, or to force me to hand over the missing pieces of research. I suspect he also wants to ensure I don't refine the technology in ways he can't control." The puzzle pieces were aligning in Evander's mind, though the emerging picture was grim. Saria's father was either unstoppable in his corporate might or desperate enough to employ mercenaries, threatening his own daughter's freedom in the process. Captain Sonari's intel suggests the Unity Protective Force is actively monitoring this. If your father truly is near a breakthrough, it could tip the balance of power throughout the sector. That can't happen. Saria leaned forward, eyes glinting with urgent resolve. "I agree, and I'd do anything to stop it from being misused. You don't understand how vital that is to me. This technology was my invention in its infancy, a dream of saving lives. I can't let it become a tool for enslavement. But I'm only one researcher. My father has entire teams at his disposal." Emotions battered Evander from all sides. Empathy for Saria, loyalty to the Unity Force, an urgent sense of moral duty. Even more complicated was the nagging personal connection he felt with her, something that transcended the typical soldier-protectee dynamic. He wondered if it was simply the bond forged in crisis or if there was something deeper, intangible linking them. "We'll stop it," he said with more conviction than he intended. "I'm with you." Saria's face lit up, relief warring with the pain of betrayal. "Thank you," she whispered. She paused, glancing down at her own hands, as though embarrassed by her vulnerability. "I'm not used to trusting outsiders, but you've shown me kindness from the start." Before Evander could respond, an alarm bleated across the shuttle's console. Their flight path registered multiple signals converging on their location, likely small interceptors. "Damn," Evander muttered, eyes scanning the readouts. "They found us faster than expected. Callista Security must have an advanced tracking net or had someone on the inside." He initiated the thrusters, shifting to manual control. "Hang on, this could get rough." The shuttle lurched as Evander coaxed more power from the thrusters, hoping to outrun or outmaneuver the incoming pursuers. On the screen, the swarm of red blips closed in, forming a blockade along the probable hyperspace routes. The craft's navigational system beeped a warning. FTL jump blocked, jammer signals detected. They were pinned in normal space, at least temporarily. Saria's hands flew over the co-pilot console. I'm detecting an old mining field in that sector, she said, enlarging the star map. Could we hide among the asteroid fragments until we find a way to bypass the jamming? It's as good a plan as any, Evander replied, banking the shuttle sharply to the left. The star field bent around them, lines of starlight swirling across the viewport. As they sped toward the coordinates, he couldn't help noticing how Saria's heart rate, displayed on a small side panel, was elevated. She must have linked her medical signals to the shuttle's systems as a precaution, perhaps. He saw a reflection of his own tension in those readouts. The chest-rattling hum of the engines reached a crescendo as they darted into the debris field, a chaotic region peppered with broken asteroids, swirling dust clouds, and irregular lumps of ancient ore. The sensors beeped continuously, measuring each chunk of rock they risked colliding with. Saria used the co-pilot's interface to modulate the shields, trying to push aside drifting hazards or reroute power to structural integrity when near collisions became too likely. It was a delicate dance with grave stakes. Behind them, smaller interceptors probed the perimeter of the field, unleashing occasional bursts of plasma that turned lumps of ancient rock into molten shards. Evander navigated a zigzag pattern, weaving around spiraling debris. They've got better maneuverability, he muttered, but we have sturdier shields. If I can angle us behind one of these bigger asteroids, we might cut the line of sight. Saria's eyes flicked to the readouts. 2 interceptors are flanking us. Another is circling. We need a plan. The entire vessel rattled, buffeted by a near miss. Sparks momentarily flew across a secondary console. Evander cursed under his breath. I'm open to suggestions. We can't outrun them in normal space while jammed. A flicker of determination crossed Saria's face, reminiscent of the moment in the lounge when she'd first tested Evander's medical skill on her injured leg. Let me try something, she said, reaching for a hidden panel beneath the main console. She withdrew a small device that looked like a wide, disc-shaped transmitter. This is a neural interface tether, one of the earlier prototypes. I adapted it to disrupt remote scanning signals for stealth field tests. It's not perfect, but it might confuse the interceptors long enough for us to slip away. Evander's eyebrows rose. Is that safe? She gave a tense shrug. Safer than letting them blast us to cosmic dust. Hook it to the main sensor array. I'll calibrate the frequencies. The device snapped into place on a coupling port near Evander's knees, and the cockpit lights flickered momentarily. The main sensor readout began to scramble, random lines crossing the screen. Outside, the interceptor's formation shifted as if they too lost sensor cohesion. Gripping the controls, Evander seized the opportunity to steer them deeper into the shadow of a large, pockmarked asteroid. For a few precious seconds, the local star's rays couldn't penetrate that gloom, and in that darkness, the shuttle disappeared from enemy scanners. At least according to the bleeping confusion on the console, Saria's device was working. One after another, the interceptors soared past their hiding spot, scanning the emptiness. Evander slowed the shuttle's thrusters to a near idle, minimizing their power signature. He exchanged a hopeful look with Saria. Through the quiet hum of the vessel, he could still feel his pulse pounding. They had momentary cover. Soon, though, the mercenaries might realize their sensors had been tricked and return for a more thorough search. Evander glanced at Saria, whose shoulders relaxed fractionally. Neither spoke for a moment, letting the tension fade a bit before the next inevitable test. They allowed a few minutes to pass, drifting in silence. The interceptor's outlines glowed faintly on the short-range scanners, but it appeared they were retreating to form a perimeter search, uncertain where the shuttle had vanished. Saria tapped a final sequence into the neural interface tether, stabilizing its disruptions. We might have 15 minutes before they recalibrate, she whispered, her voice laced with cautious optimism. That could be our window to jump, Evander said, turning his focus to the jamming signals. If I can run a quick diagnostic on their jamming frequencies, maybe we can punch out with an FTL jump to a safer system. Already his mind was ticking through the protocol for in-flight hacking, something that wasn't standard but well within the scope of advanced field ops training. While he worked on decrypting the jamming codes, Saria unbuckled herself and rose to retrieve a portable med scanner from the back console. She approached him with a concerned look, scanning him from head to toe. You took a pretty solid hit to the face back in the cargo bay, she murmured. Let me check that bruise. It's nothing, Evander said lightly, though he appreciated the care. Yet the moment she activated the med scanner, he felt a warm flush of memory. He'd first met her offering to help her with a strained leg, and here she was returning the favor. The hum of the device revealed mild tissue swelling on his jaw and elevated stress hormones in his bloodstream. She applied a small patch that eased the pain. For a fleeting second, their gazes locked. An electric sense of unspoken understanding hung between them. In any other context, they might have laughed about the irony of exchanging care under such harrowing circumstances. Or maybe they would have shared a more intimate moment. Even so, duty forced them apart as Evander resumed his hacking attempts. Working on the jamming signals, he muttered, brow furrowing in concentration. It looks like they're rotating frequencies. Might be a partial handshake with a corporate mainframe. If I can guess the handshake pattern, his voice trailed off as he typed furiously, lines of code dancing on the console screen. A new wave of alarms shot through the sensors. The interceptors had begun to circle the asteroid in a methodical search pattern, creeping closer with each pass. They had minutes, perhaps less, before being detected again. Saria, anxious, hovered by his side. Got it, he finally breathed. The jamming readout displayed a new prompt. Partial override achieved. FTL jump possible at reduced efficiency. We'll only get one shot, Evander warned. The drive might fail mid-jump if it's compromised, but it's better than being cornered. He engaged the engine's pre-jump sequence, feeling the shuttle shudder with rising energy. Through the viewport, the swirling dust and rock of the debris field churned as he angled them for a short vector out of the asteroid's gravity well. Saria's hand found his, squeezing in tense anticipation. He flicked one more switch, and a cascade of lights along the console turned amber, indicating the partial success of the improvised fix. With a half grin that was equal parts adrenaline and grim determination, Evander whispered, "Hold on." He initiated the FTL jump. The star field elongated, shimmering lines replaced by the swirling kaleidoscope of faster-than-light travel. The shuttle vibrated fiercely, threatening to tear apart under the patchwork modifications, but eventually stabilized. When the swirling patterns outside returned to the calm of real space, they were no longer in the immediate blockade. A star system of pale luminescence spread out before them. Saria's quick reference to the nav chart confirmed it was an uninhabited region. They were safe from immediate pursuit, at least for now. The tension in the cockpit dissolved into shaky relief. Yet with relief came the gnawing reality of what lay ahead. They had a dangerous technology to expose, a father's corporate empire to face, and a tenuous alliance with the Unity Protective Force. Evander and Saria shared a single look that spoke volumes. Though they had escaped one trap, their greatest challenges were still ahead. Over the next 2 days, the pair worked in the cramped confines of Saria's shuttle to piece together a plan. They ran off meager rations and short bursts of sleep, exchanging every scrap of knowledge that might help them stand against Overlord Astrius Callista's plans. Saria pored over design schematics for the neural interface she had once helped invent, pinpointing how to reroute certain functions to ensure it could only be used for healing and voluntary consciousness transfer, never for forced compliance. Evander, bridging his soldiers' resourcefulness and field medics' knowledge, offered insights on how best to approach infiltration of Callista Prime's facilities. In the quiet intervals, their connection deepened. With the immediate crisis of pursuit behind them, they found moments to reflect. Saria confided about her childhood under her father's shadow, how she'd once idolized him for championing innovative science, until she realized he valued power more. Evander revealed glimpses of the personal cost behind his official commendations, the comrades he'd lost, the nightmares that lingered. They discovered they shared an underlying idealism, the drive to protect life rather than exploit it. And so it happened one night, though the concept of night was relative in a spaceship traveling beyond standard planetary cycles, that Saria found herself wincing again, this time from a stress-induced muscle cramp in her shoulder. Without hesitation, Evander offered his healing touch, gently kneading the tight muscles. The tension that melted under his strong hands seemed to break something else free, too, a mutual sense of guardedness. In the silence that followed, Saria turned and pressed her lips to his, a gesture born of gratitude, exhaustion, and a budding trust forged through shared ordeals. The shuttle's dim overhead light cast faint shadows that emphasized the swirl of color in her eyes. Evander hesitated only a heartbeat before responding. The kiss lingered, a solace in an unforgiving galaxy, an intimate moment that acknowledged the vulnerability they'd both tried so hard to conceal. Later, lying side by side on the cramped cot that functioned as the shuttle's sleeping berth, Evander trailed a hand along the delicate patterns on her arm, marveling at the faint luminescent swirl that marked her as Azurian. "You sure you want to do this?" he murmured, referencing not just their growing closeness, but the plan they were finalizing to confront her father's corporate empire. She covered his hand with hers, turquoise fingers sliding between his. "I'm certain," she whispered, her expression equally resolute and tender. "I can't imagine turning away now. My father must be stopped before this technology is unleashed on innocent lives. And I'd rather face that challenge with you by my side." Evander's heart thudded in his chest. In that quiet moment, the sense of partnership between them solidified, transcending the boundaries of species or happenstance. They were forging a path forward together, a path that could rewrite the fate of entire worlds or lead to their downfall if they failed. When the time came to put their plan into motion, they emerged from the wilderness of uncharted space. Sarya's shuttle soared into the orbit of a neutral station where they intended to gather supplies and intel. After all, infiltration meant they needed forged credentials and specialized gear. Evander reached out to Captain Sonari, explaining his findings in careful detail. Rather than dissuade him, his commanding officer gave measured approval. "If there's a chance to retrieve definitive proof that Callista Prime is dealing in mind control, the Unity Protective Force can rally a formal crackdown. But we need solid evidence. Good luck, Commander." A final echo of worry passed between Evander and Sarya as they considered the risk. The father she once adored might be irredeemable, or perhaps he was manipulated in turn by partners with more sinister aims. They had no guarantee they'd emerge unscathed. Yet as they clasped hands and stepped onto the neutral station's bustling concourse, they shared a single, unwavering resolve to ensure that the next time the words, "human gave an alien girl a leg massage," and what happened next was unbelievable, were whispered in any corner of the galaxy, it would represent a story of healing, unity, and the extraordinary bonds that could be forged when two hearts chose courage over fear. If you've followed our story so far, you already know it's a wild ride brimming with cosmic chases, emotional discoveries, and a stunning revelation about futuristic technology. In this final leg of our journey, we witness our courageous protagonists outwit relentless mercenaries and wrest control of a powerful invention that could shape or shatter lives across the galaxy. There's danger at every turn, but also moments of true connection that prove sometimes the most unexpected bonds are the ones that save us. Hungry for more details on how our unlikely heroes triumph over betrayal and looming disaster? Stick around and soak up the suspenseful conclusion. We promise it's worth every pulse-pounding second. And don't forget, subscribe to our channel so you can stay on top of new releases and share your favorite moments with friends. As always, leave a comment below telling us your thoughts. Your insights help build an amazing community where fans can discover new stories and support each other's creative imaginations. Enjoy the story's finale and let us know what you think.